It's funny, isn't it? I mean, we look up and see the moon practically every night, this big familiar presence in the sky. But for all that familiarity, it still feels like it's keeping secrets.
Oh, definitely. It's this weird juxtaposition, right? We've literally walked on its surface, mapped it out, analyzed its rocks. Yet, according to some pretty interesting sources we've been looking at, there are aspects of the moon that just don't add up. Like, they challenge what we think we know about it, about how it formed, about pretty much everything, really.
Exactly. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive. There are these 7 persistent mysteries that our source lays out. And honestly, they're the kind of things that just make you go, wait, what? We're talking about the possibility that the moon isn't completely solid.
Yeah.
I know, it sounds crazy, right?
Uh,
These bizarre flashes of light people have been reporting for centuries.
yeah, and it gets even wilder. We're also going to dig into the moon's orbit. It's almost too perfect to be natural. Plus, there are those strange stories surrounding the Apollo missions, the whole water on the moon thing that came out a few years back, potential structures. I mean, the list goes on. And of course, we can't forget about the dark side of the moon, always a hotbed of speculation.
Right. So here's the plan. We're going to dissect each of these 7 mysteries, look at the evidence from our source, and see if we can make sense of it all. Maybe even explore some of those more out there possibilities.
Mhm.
Because honestly, some of this stuff is just too intriguing to ignore. What do you say? Ready to dive in?
Let's do it. This hollow moon thing is a pretty wild place to start, though.
Yeah, this one really grabs your attention, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So according to our source, during the Apollo 12 mission back in '69, they intentionally crashed the lunar module onto the surface, right?
Right. Part of an experiment.
Okay, so you'd think it's a solid impact, you get some vibrations, maybe a little rumbling, and that's that.
Yeah.
But the source says that the moon rang like a bell for almost an hour. An hour. Like, that's not just a little tremor, that's something else entirely.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And what makes it even weirder is what that kind of extended ringing implies. I mean, think about it. If you strike a hollow object, the sound resonates for a lot longer than if you strike something solid. So this unexpected result really threw a wrench into things. People started wondering, could the moon actually be hollow, or at least partially hollow? Like, are we talking about a giant empty space inside?
And that's where those wild theories start to creep in.
Right.
I mean, the source mentions things like an ancient space station, a giant artificial megastructure. I mean, it sounds like pure science fiction.
It definitely pushes the boundaries of what we typically consider, but it's important to note that mainstream science does offer a different explanation. They say that the moon's composition, the type of rock, and how it transmits vibrations could account for that prolonged ringing. Apparently, lunar rock is different from Earth rock in some key ways, and that influences how seismic waves travel. Like, the moon's crust is also highly fractured, and that affects things too.
I get it. Science has its explanations. But still, that hour-long ringing, I don't know, it's hard to shake off the feeling that there might be something more to it. Like, could there be some unknown aspect of the moon's formation or its internal structure that we haven't figured out yet? Maybe our current models are just incomplete.
Yeah, it definitely challenges some of our assumptions. I mean, we tend to picture celestial bodies as being, pretty solid, but the Apollo 12 experiment really makes you wonder if there's more to the story.
Okay, let's move on to the next mystery on our list. These flashes of light people have been reporting on the moon. This isn't a new thing, is it?
No, not at all. Astronomers have been documenting these so-called transient lunar phenomena, TLPs for short, for centuries. We're talking about all sorts of visual weirdness, glowing patches, sudden bursts of light, lights that appear to pulse or even move around, really a whole spectrum of strange stuff.
And the really intriguing part is, according to our source, NASA and other space agencies haven't been able to pin down a single definitive explanation for these TLPs. I mean, that itself is kind of strange, don't you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. The source lays out a few possible explanations. On the one hand, you have natural occurrences, like maybe it's gases escaping from the moon's interior, creating these temporary glowing effects as they interact with sunlight or the lunar environment. That's the outgassing theory.
Right, but then the source throws in these other more, I don't know, unconventional ideas. Like, what if these lights are signals from, well, let's just say extraterrestrial sources? Or maybe they're signs of some kind of hidden activity happening on or even under the moon's surface.
Exactly. And when you consider that earlier conversation we had about the possibility of the moon not being completely solid, or maybe even having these unexplained structures inside. Well, the idea that these lights could be some kind of intentional signals from, something or someone within those spaces, it's a pretty wild thought, isn't it?
It is, it is. So next time you're gazing at the moon, think about this. Beneath that calm, familiar glow, there might be these secret light shows happening that we just don't fully understand. Are they natural? Are they
Hmm.
something else?
Right.
It really makes you wonder.
It does. All right, moving on to the moon's orbit, which our source describes as, wait for it, perfect. Now, how often do you hear that word used in astronomy?
Right. It's a pretty bold game. So what's so perfect about the moon's orbit?
Well, for starters, it's remarkably circular. Most natural satellites, the ones that orbit planets, tend to have these elliptical orbits, kind of like stretched out circles. But our moon, it just cruises around Earth in this nice, tidy circle. And that's not all. The source also points out this mind-blowing coincidence. The moon is about 400 times smaller than the sun, but it's also, conveniently, about 400 times closer to Earth. And guess what that leads to?
Total solar eclipses. Right.
Yeah.
Where the moon perfectly blocks out the sun.
Precisely. I mean, that level of alignment, the fact that it works out so perfectly, the source uses the term mathematical precision, and it's hard to argue with that. It's led some people to speculate that maybe, just maybe, this isn't all just a random cosmic coincidence.
Okay, I can see where they're coming from. Like, it's so perfect that it almost seems intentional, right? Like, someone put the moon in that exact spot for a reason.
That's the theory. Anyway, the idea that maybe the moon wasn't captured randomly by Earth's gravity, but was, well, placed there deliberately for a specific purpose. It's definitely a thought-provoking concept.
It is. It really makes you wonder about the forces that shaped our solar system.
Yeah.
Was it all just a lucky roll of the cosmic dice? Or was there, as the source asks, something more deliberate at play?
It's one of those big existential questions, isn't it? All right, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the Apollo missions. We all know the famous images, the moonwalks, the whole one small step for man thing. But our source hints at something more unusual, some stories that don't often make the headlines.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this. Like, beyond the official mission reports, there are all these rumors and anecdotes about strange encounters that the astronauts supposedly had. The source even mentions leaked transcripts that supposedly suggest that during the Apollo 11 mission, the crew saw unidentified objects, like things were watching them.
And then there's that quote that's often attributed to Neil Armstrong. They are here. They are watching us. I mean, if he really said that, it's pretty significant, to say the least. Though it's important to note that these claims are often unsubstantiated, and they haven't been officially confirmed by NASA.
Of course. But our source also brings up another angle. These claims from some former NASA employees that certain photos from the moon landings were either altered or completely censored, like they were trying to hide evidence of structures or, UFOs. Again, who knows if it's true, but it's a persistent story.
It is, and it taps into that age-old human fascination with the unknown, the possibility of something beyond ourselves. So, are we to believe that there's stuff happening on the moon, evidence of something or someone that's being kept secret? Who knows? But it's hard to deny the allure of these Apollo mission mysteries.
It really is. Okay, let's switch tracks again and talk about something a little more recent.
Nah.
Water on the moon. Now, this was a big deal when the news came out.
Oh, yeah. It definitely changed our understanding of the moon. For a long time, the scientific consensus was that the moon was bone dry, like no water whatsoever. But then, in 2020, NASA came out and said, nope, we were wrong. There's actually a lot of water ice, especially near the lunar poles.
Which is interesting in itself, but our source raises a really good question. If this water ice was there all along, why didn't we know about it sooner? Why did it take so long for the scientific community to acknowledge it?
Good question. And that's where the source gets a little conspiratorial, suggesting that maybe this information wasn't new, that maybe it was deliberately suppressed. After all, finding usable water on the moon is a game changer.
Lake
Right?
time.
Yes.
Like, think about it. You can break water down into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen for breathing, hydrogen for fuel. It basically turns the moon into a giant gas station and oxygen tank for future space exploration.
Yeah.
If you want to go further into space, the moon becomes a pretty important pit stop.
Exactly. So the source is basically asking, was there a secret plan to colonize the moon all along? And was the water discovery kind of held back to avoid public scrutiny or maybe international competition?
Who knows? It's an intriguing theory. Okay, next up, let's talk about those so-called lunar structures. This is where things get really blurry, right? We're talking about those satellite images and Apollo mission photos where people claim to see things that, well, that just don't look natural.
Right, like strange shapes, geometric patterns, things that don't seem to fit with the usual lunar landscape. Our source even mentions images that some interpret as showing a massive entrance into underground tunnels.
Now, I always try to be skeptical with this kind of stuff. I mean, we all know about pareidolia, right? That's
Huh.
where our brains trick us into seeing patterns where none really exist, like a random shadow suddenly becomes a face or a building or whatever.
Absolutely. But some people who've looked at these images, and they're often scientists or researchers, they argue that some of these features are just too regular, too geometrically precise to be mere tricks of light and shadow. The source points out that they believe these could be actual ancient ruins, the remnants of some kind of civilization that might have been on the moon way before us.
Okay, that's where things get really mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Like, if we're talking about real structures, who built them and when and why? It really forces you to rethink everything you thought you knew about the moon.
It does. It throws our whole understanding of lunar history out the window and opens up a whole universe of possibilities. And speaking of possibilities, let's not forget about the ultimate enigma, the dark side of the moon.
Ah, yes, the side we never see from Earth because of that whole tidal locking thing. It's always been a breeding ground for wild theories and speculation. What does our source have to say about it?
Well, as the source explains, the far side of the moon is a very different place compared to the side we see. It's got a thicker crust, a lot more craters, and some of those craters, as the source describes them, have a suspicious symmetry to them.
I see where this is going. If you wanted to build a secret alien base or hide something from prying eyes on Earth, the far side of the moon would be the perfect spot.
Right. Out of sight, out of mind. The source also mentions China's Chang'e 4 mission, which was the first to actually land a rover on the far side back in 2019. And get this, the findings they've released publicly have been, well, let's just say they haven't exactly been groundbreaking. Like, they haven't announced anything truly unexpected or shocking.
Which is weird, right? You'd think that the first mission to the far side would uncover something truly amazing. So some people are speculating, and our source echoes this, that maybe China found something big, but they're just not telling anyone.
It wouldn't be the first time a government kept a lid on a major discovery, right? It definitely adds another layer of intrigue to the whole dark side mystery.
It does. So there you have it. We've gone through these 7 really interesting, sometimes baffling mysteries about the moon. It's clear that even with all the scientific progress we've made, our closest celestial neighbor is still holding back a lot of secrets.
Absolutely. These anomalies we've talked about, the weird ringing after the Apollo impact, the stories of strange encounters during the missions, the water ice mystery, the potential structures, and the silence surrounding the findings from the far side, they all raise some serious questions about what we really know about the moon. And maybe, just maybe, they hint at something much bigger, something that challenges our whole understanding of, well, everything.
Exactly. And as our source points out, we're about to enter a whole new era of lunar exploration. There are multiple missions planned to the moon in the coming years, so maybe we'll finally get some answers, but knowing the moon will probably just end up with even more questions.
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know.
It's so true. So here's something for everyone listening to think about. Considering everything we've discussed, the unexplained structures, the strange orbit, the hidden water, the possibility of, well, let's just say others on the moon,
Hmm.
is our current understanding of this celestial body truly complete?
Yeah.
Or are there fundamental aspects of the moon that we're still totally in the dark about?
Food for thought indeed. It seems like the moon, for all its familiarity, remains an enigma wrapped in a riddle shrouded in. Well, you get the idea.
Exactly. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the mysteries of the moon. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time. See you then.